Arteta! What a strike! What a screamer! Zola! And a fantastic goal! Arsenal back in it! And here's Lipa, lines it up, finds the net. Arsenal in front.
Arteta shows his commitment to the fan movement to change ownership by making sure the football doesn't take center stage. This is the Arsenal Vision post-match podcast. My name's Elliot Smith, the Black Man, Twitter, Yankee Gunner. So basically, it was like the perfect game for a moment where the attention and the pressure is meant to be on ownership because it was sort of nothing. And as a result, it didn't take any of the attention away from the quite interesting fan protest and the movement that seems to be erupting to once again try to push Stan Kroenke and KSE out of Arsenal. A movement that we may touch on. Look, I do want to talk football. So what we're going to try to do in this conversation, in this first part of the conversation, is talk about the Everton game, explore what happened there, and look forward to the absolute crunch tie of the season, as they all will be from here on, assuming we progress, against Villarreal in the semifinal of the Europa League. Because after this conversation, Akhil, one of the lead members of the Arsenal Supporters Trust, the AST, will be here to talk to us about the fan forum, which he was at, ask questions directly of Vinay Venkatesham and Josh Kroenke. And so we'll get his take on that and the fan protest. So we won't touch on it much in the first section. So I just wanted to let you know that in case people want to hear about that. That'll be coming after the break later on down the road. So with that out of the way, let me introduce Paul. You can find him on Twitter at PausMyPants. Hello, Pause.
Woohoo!
And Clive, you can find him on Twitter at ClivePFC. Hello, Clive.
Hello, hello.
Hope everyone had a great weekend, a weekend away from us, which, good. Hopefully not so good, but we're back. Clive, really quickly. Like I said, I don't want to make this the thrust of it, but I'll just ask you, we did the live stream. We talked about the protest. We had the scenes of the protest on while we were doing that. But in terms of what it does for the players, for the coach, from a footballing standpoint, set aside for a moment what this movement means and the importance of it, because like I said, I'll get to that later. How do you think this backdrop of fan resentment of ownership and fan action impacts, if at all, what the players are trying to do from a football standpoint?
Oh, I think it would massively. I think players are not immune. They all have their social media. They can all look around and see what's happening. On this day, their pre-game normal process was affected. They had to get there early just in case. They could look out the windows there at the Emirates and just see exactly what's going on. And of all the games of this season, I felt we missed the crowd the most in this game. I felt, and because they were quite close, and they were. Imagine being a player when you're a player. These songs just become the backdrop to what you're trying to do. It's like background music, right? And they get used to playing in front of big crowds, in front massive crowds. And the further you go up the leagues, one of the big rewards is playing in front of more people, and then to not have them is hard enough, but you get used to that because they're nowhere to be seen. But then suddenly you can hear them. There's a helicopter flying overhead. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. You can't miss the fact that they're around. And I think, there's been a number of freakish results this day at home. Maybe we had a couple away as well at Old Trafford, for example, that we don't normally get. But I feel that the crowd this game, I don't think we lose this game. I don't think there's a number of games at home with the normal crowd in there because that's what it's all about, right? We're the 12th man and we just don't allow certain things to manifest themselves. And it just becomes the rhythm of the game. So I really felt for everybody on the playing side and management side this weekend because this was none of their doing and they were thrust into a situation they had to react to. And yeah, we shouldn't be losing that game, by the way, but I'd give them a little bit of sympathy.
Yeah, I mean, the only thing about missing the crowd is I somewhat wonder if the crowd was there, what kind of atmosphere they'd be creating, because I imagine it would be 90 minutes of we want Kroenke out, say we want Kroenke out. And does that help? Does it hurt? I don't know.
There were people, there were people outside that I've listened to and people I know who were at the protest that said that very much it was against the ownership, but very much supportive of the team.
Of course, yeah.
So I think that would have been even bigger inside the stadium, but hey, who's to know?
No, that absolutely. I mean, I think it would have been a combination of, and the thing that makes it so unfortunate, right? Like, and this was something they said on the Arscast, which I thought was really good point James made. It is so unfortunate that after all of these months and months of fans being away from the Emirates, that the return to the Emirates doesn't get to be a celebration of going back into the ground to back the players and once again take their rightful place as the sort of beating heart of Arsenal Football Club, but instead to be outside the stadium, not permitted to go in and watch the football, but left to essentially try to create an environment that pushes the ownership out because of the toxic influence it's having on the club. It's just an awful juxtaposition there. So it's a shame. But Paul, one super quick thing. We're going to try to get Matt from Giant Gunner on to talk all things finance because that is his area of expertise and certainly not ours collectively, although, Clive, you have a bit of a background there yourself. But this whole rumor of Daniel Ek or whatever, the founder of Spotify wanting to buy the club, I mean, whether or not I think it's ridiculous, it's problematic to me for a variety of reasons, not the least of which is we go from a billionaire owner who has been a disaster despite decades of sports ownership to a billionaire owner with no experience who seems to want to create a populist movement that would install ex-players as having some say despite not really knowing whether those ex-players have the qualifications. I mean, don't we already have enough ex-players with questionable qualifications in positions? But setting that aside, you know, Arsene Wenger famously said, if I don't want to sell my house, you can't buy it. Now, he usually said that right before our players rocked up at the new camp doing keepy-uppies in a Barcelona shirt. But setting that aside, it doesn't matter who's interested in Arsenal if the man who owns it doesn't want to sell. And this is the unfortunate thing we find ourselves in before we shift gears to Everton. Just as these rumors float around for you, is this the really central issue here that there will be no change, absent a change in the goals and desire of the man who owns the club?
Yeah, I think the Crankies' valuation of the club and this 2 billion or 1.8 billion number that's floating around are total ends of a spectrum here. I think when, especially with this Super League stuff that's been flying around and they'll have been poring over the numbers and the projections, I have no idea what the Crankies value the club at. And at the end of the day, they've never really sold anything. I think they're building a portfolio, and the value of the club has a value, kind of a synergy value beyond the value of the club itself, certainly beyond its value today. I wouldn't be surprised if they see it as being worth twice what the numbers floating around are versus future projections of where they see this business going. And maybe it won't be a Super League in the future. Maybe UEFA will get their shit together with their version of what the European Championship will become. But there's no way the Crankies look at the valuation of the club in today's framework of a business, and they don't sell, and it just makes all sorts of... Like, if they didn't have Arsenal, they'd want another Premier League club in Europe, because that's the best league in Europe, of a profile like Arsenal, preferably in a city like Arsenal City is in, because it makes all kinds of sense for their business, their brand. It just makes all sorts of sense in the world. And it's like, what's he need? A bigger ranch? What does he need? He doesn't need $2 billion.
Maybe he wants a bigger ranch. Who are we to decide how big the ranch needs to be?
The only reason he sells it is because he wants to take that money and buy the next LA Rams or some. But what is it? Like, beyond football's the biggest. They described it, I think he described it as the Wild West as a sport. But that where there's chaos, there's opportunity too. I mean, American sports and franchises are very, very predictable. He doesn't need predictable. He needs opportunity, enhancement to the portfolio. I mean, it's hard to work out exactly why they're in this business, because there's probably better businesses on the planet, but it's still a good business. And this is what they do. And he's at an age now he ain't going to be changing businesses. And the son has been brought up in this business. This is their business. And you want to be in football, the biggest sport in the world, the most exciting, growing, changing, dynamic sport in the world. in the biggest league in the world, in London. It's like, what else are they going to buy? And Daniel Ek, I mean, it's great that he's got whatever he's got, 3 billion, 2 billion, 5 billion, but he doesn't have it in cash.
Yeah.
Plus, when you add in Henry, Vieira, and Bergkamp, if he has 3.4 billion before they join in, he has 3.4 billion after they join in.
No, they're not putting up money. Look, no. I don't think the question of whether he could do it is particularly interesting, because I have no doubt he could. Billionaires have access to billions of dollars of capital, and it would be some kind of group, and there would probably be some debt burden there as well, and it would probably look a lot like what Stan did, frankly, just without the experience owning a sports team. Now, that hasn't been a benefit to Arsenal where Stan is concerned. Look, I still think it boils down to whether Stan wants to do it or not. I think we agree on that. So if you're good, why don't we shift gears to Everton, talk some football, and then get on to the Villarreal tie, because I think that is really the crux of it. So, look, Paul, I think this is going to be one of the hardest types of games to discuss, because what you want on a podcast or in a tweet, God knows, is a strong, raw emotion. A feeling of great pride or tremendous anger. Those things set up for a good conversation. The problem is, this was a 7 out of 10 performance with a 3 out of 10 finishing. And, basically the breaks didn't go our way. We lose a penalty to the pixels on the screen, which is a joke. And they get their goal thanks to pixels on the screen combined with a Leno Howler. But other than that, it's a perfectly acceptable 7 out of 10 performance that, in my mind, Paul, encapsulates Arsenal under Arteta at the moment right now, which is just, there's a lot of pretty pictures and patterns, but it isn't quite delivering. It's like Man City if Man City didn't have chances and goals.
Yeah. I think that's really right. I went back to this game after we did our instant reaction podcast, and I was determined to see that Everton weren't really up for it, and they weren't really, or that we were a little off. Now I think, to Clive's point, where all of this turmoil cost us is in momentary stupidity. We can think of 1 or 2 or 3 things in this game where it's like, oh, that was bad. But that was in the moment. In terms of the overall commitment to both sides, I expected this to be a bit lackluster when I kind of looked at it in the cold light of day. But both teams, the energy expended from both teams in this game, I'm not saying it was the highest quality you've ever seen. The commitment was there. The energy was there. They both had a plan. The problem was they were going to create fewer, opportunities to have opportunities than us, because they were kind of playing on the counter, but their opportunities were going to be better. And that's kind of what ruled the day. They would have fewer opportunities, but more one-on-ones. And in particular, you could see where their plan was to isolate Xhaka at some stage. And, but from our standpoint, we brought energy. There was a lot of good build-up. A lot of people played pretty well till we get into the final third and around the box. And in moments where we could have done something a little special, we did something a little unspecial. The decision-making, the final ball, kind of classic stuff. Maybe we didn't have our killers on the pitch with an Aubameyang or a Lacazette in form. It was maybe a game or two too soon for Eddie to show his stuff, though he hasn't shown that for a long time. And it was set up to be a frustrating day where we would flatter to deceive, but not put that final ball. We did have a few chances here, and we did have a few chances in front of goal. And it was kind of, oh, look, he kicked it into the keeper's hands, or he didn't quite get it off quick enough, or he kind of flubbed it. Just frustrating. It was not lack of effort. It was not lack of a game plan. I'm sure there was something cleverer we could have done in terms of how we set up. But it's like everything up till the edge of the box is
fine. Yeah. It's 7 out of 10, 6 out of 10. You know
might
what I
have
mean?
wanted a bit more of it.
Yeah.
But again, I still think there's a big part of other teams do tactics, and we should, Everton were actually really at it in terms of energy, and their plan. It might have been the most ambitious plan, but they were really snapping into the tackles. This was a pretty physical game. This was, I'd seen it written up as two mid-table teams, kind of with not so much to play for. That's not actually how I saw it when I put on the cold light of day.
Fair enough. Look, I think the problem is, especially if you're neutral, and who cares about neutral, is that most of what you're going to get your blood pumping about is penalty box action, what happens at that end of the pitch. And that's really where things short-circuited. I think the argument against Arteta is we've been playing a lot of games where we have to edge them. And we didn't edge this one. And it was a combination of, look, they created next to nothing. They got a goalkeeping howler for their goal. And we ultimately didn't create much. But any way you want to measure this, we had more shots than them. We had more expected goals than them. We dominated the possession. We dominated the final third possession. We dominated the penalty box passes. So there was a lot
of... It wasn't enough.
No, it just wasn't enough. And I think some of that is down to the quality at center forward. I thought Nketiah had an acceptable game. But someone's still got to stick the ball in the back of the net. Look at Manchester City against Spurs in the cup final, which is hilarious, by the way. And they sacked their cup specialist coach, supposedly, right before the cup, put in a guy with no coaching experience, and get pounded in the cup final. Now, they would have anyway. But if you look at that game, I think it was like 2.9 expected goals to 0.04. And yet, the 0.04 was a phenomenal diving save, right, to keep Spurs, I think it was Lo Celso, from scoring. And City needed a header from a set piece, despite all their good work. But this is the point. When you create 2.9 expected goals and concede 0.04, you can just about edge it. When it's 0.8 to 0.6, you're leaving a lot in the balance. And that's really where the difference is for me right now. So Clive, two things I want to touch on. So just first, with respect to the attack, yes, it's missing Odegaard, and yes, it was missing Aubameyang and Lacazette. But I do think that this is something that at times, we've been good at. Slavia Prague and Sheffield United, we created plenty. But do you still think that that's the last piece of the puzzle, that Arteta has massively improved the way we progress the ball, the patterns of play, the triangles, all of that stuff? But when it comes to this team creating, good chances on the end of it, that's still lacking. And what I would ask you is that a coach's job, or is that ultimately where, kind of like the bird being pushed out of the nest, the players just have to fly? You've been put in the positions, now go score some goals.
Yeah, I think, and I'm getting this from listening to videos and reading and listening to Thierry Henry. They say that basically, even Pep used to say that it's my job to get you to the last third. When you get to the last third, it's down to you. And I think we've had many podcasts here where we couldn't get to the last third. Remember those ones?
Yeah.
we couldn't get anywhere up the pitch, or we were getting up the pitch in certain areas and not using the central zones. And I think we get out of the pitch pretty well for the players that we have. And I think we have some players that carry a level of authority, but some that are just not there yet. And so they need to be carried by senior players. And, just look at the Everton front four. And by the way, there's a couple of players there I rate and a couple of players I don't. But you look at Richarlison, Sigurdsson, Calvert-Lewin, and James Rodriguez. Sorry. Yeah, Rodriguez. Right, so Sigurdsson, 50 mil. Richarlison, 50 mil. Calvert-Lewin, you wouldn't get any change out of 50 mil right now for an English player with that level. He's going to go to Euros, and he deserves to, as Harry Kane's backup. And James has been, for at one period, one of the best players in the world. Right? So they carry a level of been there, done it. You see what I mean? Either been there, done it for real, or physically they can really cope. But they have a level of authority. I don't think any of them played well. I do like Richarlison as a player, and Calvert-Lewin I do like as well, but I don't think they played well. I thought they were awful as a four. If you look at our four, you've got Saka, Smith Rowe, Pepe, and Nketiah. What's the average age of those four?
20.
Where's the certainty of performance? How many international caps, full international caps in that group? You see where I'm going? It's just, there's lots of talent. We love those players, but they can't be playing, every single week, starting, carrying our hopes. They haven't got the authority and the certainty. We know they're going to be great. Particularly the two youngsters there, Saka and Smith Rowe. Pepe can be good, but never going to be the player we paid for, but that wasn't his fault.
I thought he was good in this
talent.
game, by the way. Just as an aside, I think he was undervalued in this game. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, I think he's been good throughout the year.
Yep.
But when you look at this team, we probably want him to be better than he actually is. Do you see what I mean? Because we know he's the senior guy at 25. We need that guy to step forward, and so because of that, we lack all. I always say this: it's about authority. And sometimes, honestly, lads, you walk on the pitch and you look at the other team and you just say, "Yeah, I fancy it today." And it's literally like that. And when we've got our big boys out, we have a bit more authority about our work, a bit more certainty, and it just makes people react differently. I think we looked vulnerable on the day, despite playing quite well. Yeah. In a footballer's mind, I still think I've got a chance against these because they're young and they will fade, they will go, they lack a bit of strength in certain areas, lack a bit of speed in certain areas. It has to go well for us with this team out there. When we got our top boys out there, our more experienced boys out there that have done a few things, that have track records over 5 years, then we are the Arsenal team. And I think for the team that we had out, I thought we were fine. We look like we're coached, but you can't. In the end, Elliot, I can almost hear people saying, "But Clive, we keep losing. We lost to Burnley. We lost to Aston Villa twice. We lost to Wolves twice." And they're right. And we've seen all those games, and we were never dominating any of them apart from the Villa home game. But this is happening too often, and I've spoken about the flaw before with this team. But in the end, you have to manage key moments. And we managed to not manage those moments, and they keep going against us at critical times.
It is a tension that I think we are all feeling. I want to be clear. I cannot argue with, I cannot dismiss, I cannot be critical of someone who would say, we're 10th, we've lost 13 games, we've scored the fewest amount of goal, we've already had more goalless games at home than any season ever, whatever the case may be. Like, the numbers that are stacking up are really bad numbers. And anybody who wants to look at those and say, that for me is it, that's not acceptable. I am not going to take the moral position of saying, you're wrong, and let me give you all of these underlying metrics, because I know for some people, their attitude is, what do those mean? I find myself feeling the need to be a bit more circumspect. I mean, I look at Graham Potter at Brighton. Everybody mostly thinks he's doing fine. The underlying metrics for him are good, and the patterns of play look really good. They just can't stick the ball in the net. And that people, a lot of Arsenal fans I talk to are like, Graham Potter's great. Brighton are playing good football. They've been really unlucky. It'll come around. How is that really different from us, though? Really? Now you can say, well, because we're Arsenal and we have a different set of standards. Totally agree. But if you've got guys like Eddie Nketiah, who's probably Brighton level, up front for you, you may struggle to stick the ball in the back of the net. Watching Danny Welbeck this season, when I watch Brighton, has been sad. There's no other way to say it. I like the guy a lot, but he can't do anything. So I don't know. I mean, since this Boxing Day resurgence that everybody likes to point to, we're on a 64-point pace. It's kind of meh. But if we'd been on a 64-point pace all season, I don't think the angst would be there. Now, that requires hand-waving a start that is so bad that maybe it should never be hand-waved. It needs to be examined. But that's really what I look at is I say, we've had ups and downs this season, but since that Boxing Day change of system and change of approach to football, we've mostly kind of been par. Now it's got to get better. The other thing you do is you look around the league and you see what other quote-unquote big teams are doing results-wise and goals-wise and performance-wise, and there's a lot of lackluster shit going on right now. So I think what it boils down to is what we all know, which is that the season's kind of coming to the point where it's Europa League or bust. I did a poll on Twitter. Let's say we finish 9th and we lose to Villarreal. Let's say we finish 9th and beat Villarreal but lose to United. Let's say we finish 9th and win the Europa League. And I said, would you keep Arteta under those circumstances? 90% would keep him if we win the Europa League. About 65%, 70% would keep him if we make it to the final. About 60% would sack him if we don't make the final. And it makes me uncomfortable because we don't want to be a cup team. You should judge on the 38-game league season. But I think it shows you, and that's just a poll on Twitter, some thousands of people, but kind of what is hanging in the balance coming up. But before we get to that, Paul, one thing that I think was an interesting tweak in this game, Richarlison plays from the left, but in this game he played from the right. And I think the goal was to target Xhaka. Now, to be fair, he had basically no joy the whole game. He wasn't a big factor. I think he beat him twice, and once leads to a goal and shouldn't have. But it does raise the question that a coach looked at this and said, I can target Xhaka. I'm going to put my guy who I think can beat him on him. So what do you think about Richarlison being put on Xhaka and how Xhaka responded, but also what that means for Xhaka continuing forward in this role if you worry, someone like Emery, who we know loves to watch tape, God, does he love to watch tape, certainly going to look at Chukwueze and say, I got to get him up against Granit Xhaka.
Yeah. Well, that's what I think.
Yeah, okay. There you go.
I think Emery's going to look at the tape and think Chukwueze against Xhaka. Chukwueze. So it'll be interesting to see what we think our options are at left back in this game, because it could be very, very similar. I guess the first game's away, right? So maybe they'll be a bit more protagonist. And maybe that won't be the worst thing because we'll be a little more set. I mean, we so clearly played a 3 in this, and the 3 was Xhaka, Marie in the centre, and Holding on the right, with Chambers pushed up a bit. I mean, it's a shame it wasn't a good result because tactically we're quite interesting at the moment. Maybe not to the rest of the world, but to ourselves. Like the whole Ceballos, Pepe, Xhaka side of things. Partey is very much holding the centre on his own with as a hub and people rotating around him. The distribution from Xhaka's side, that whole dynamic with Ceballos linking up with him is interesting. Chambers did get forward in this game even more than I had remembered and put in some really good balls that could have turned into something. He got himself into the middle of the box and had a shot that he kind of hit into the ground a little too deeply, and it just kind of skimmed over where the bar was. There were lots of interesting things where we got into the box or around the box, and then not very much. But we've invested against different teams. This was the game I would have expected we didn't play Xhaka there because it was obvious what they should do. And lo and behold, they went and did it. So I'm a bit worried that this is just how we're playing, and we're just going to try and not make that mistake against Villarreal in the next game, and it will literally be Xhaka versus Chukwueze. He didn't always play for them, but...
well, in that situation, you think he might, though, right?
Yeah. Yeah,
you could see it.
So, and then you say, well, what are our options at the moment, given that we haven't trusted anybody else at left back for a little while? So, I mean, I've been looking a bit at Villarreal over the weekend, and I know they're not having an absolutely brilliant season, but they're not like these other teams we've played. They're dangerous up front.
Yeah. One of the things we were talking about possibly doing for Patreon is a rewatch of the second half against Barcelona as a sort of preview of what to expect, because that was an interesting half of football that they were definitely effective in. So we could look at that. Clive, let's jump ahead. We could talk about the offside, and maybe we will, but I don't know that I have the energy anymore for us to explain why it's obviously stupid the way they're drawing these lines on the pitch and the way they're doing the offside rule and how it's against the spirit, and how can you draw pixels on one side, but on the other side, you have no idea if it's the exact moment the ball leaves the foot. Like, the whole thing is stupid. None of it makes sense. We all agree on that. Probably a soft penalty, and I still think you got to go win the game on your own. But the goal we concede is certainly one we shouldn't. So let's talk Bern Leno. I watched Manuel Almunia. I lived through that, and I have the scars and the emotional damage to prove it. Manuel Almunia lost us games, like multiple games, lost us titles. Manuel Almunia made his defense play worse. I think that the narrative around Leno is probably starting to tilt too far to the side of him being a problem, more than he is. We have the best or second best set piece defense in the entire league. That was, remember Almunia, all you had to do was loft a straight ball into the box and let him fluff his lines, wave at it, fan at it, and tap it into the goal for an easy goal. Like, I don't know. I don't see Bern Leno being anywhere near the level of problem that is being discussed, but certainly his form is a question. His distribution is weird to me. He's kicking longer, more, again, maybe by design, but it's not working. And then there's this. This is just inexcusable. I don't know if it's a lapse. I don't know if maybe he sees Calvert-Lewin coming out of the corner of his eyes, and that's what he's trying to position himself for, and takes his eye off it for a minute. But how do you feel about this obvious howler that Leno concedes and where it leaves him in terms of the pecking order, given that his backup, Matt Ryan, had been given a game just a game before?
Yeah, and I thought that was significant, actually.
I know you did, yeah. Which was prescient of you. You caused the Leno howler. Congrats.
Because I think he's been frayed at the edges for a little while, and he just has. The thing I look for. I'm not a goalkeeping coach, but my good friends at work, Mark, is, and we talk a lot about this. And he said consistently from the start, we picked the wrong goalkeeper, and he goes into it as to why. And
you mean versus Martinez? You mean between the two?
Exactly. Okay. Yeah, he goes into it as to why. A lot of it is around command. A lot of it is about how defenders look when he's there. And he feels, we feel in discussion that basically he doesn't command his area enough, doesn't help defenders enough. But for me, I look at simple things like shot saving, and that's it. And Leno and Martinez are both very good at that. But authority means something. And Martinez really gave us an edge last year when it came to that towards the end of the season, which I did not expect. I actually been watching him lately. He's not playing that well, to be honest. But because I think the goalkeepers, they either exude this authority or they don't. And I think Leno is starting to look nervous. That's it. Regardless of whether he's making saves or not, he's starting to get that feeling that something bad's going to happen, And the Everton goalkeeper, by the way, is a good example. He was going through this recently. He seemed to have, he took some time out, had some games off. He's got himself in some great shape. He's physically dropped some weight. He looks fantastic, and he's springing around that goal. And it looks like he's going to make saves. It's a great example of somebody just needs a break. He's out, he's back in, and he looks sharp. And he saved him a point at the weekend, because that save from Martelli was the game changer, right?
Yeah.
So I think Leno is going through a dip. And I just think there's no issues if he's going through a dip, saying, you know what, I've got to make a decision here. Because I'm playing for my life. And his goalkeeper is not exuding any confidence at all. Whereas Matt Ryan now just looks like he's won the lottery. And every minute, he's just out there. He's giving it everything. He looks so sharp. He looks so focused and engaged. And Leno doesn't.
Can I ask you something, though? Has Arteta unwittingly created this problem for himself by playing Matt Ryan in the Fulham game? Like I get that he wants to get a look at him, and maybe there's an understandable reason, but if you just stick with Leno there, and maybe he gets through it, and he doesn't feel there's competition breathing down his neck, you don't go into a semifinal now not knowing who your best keeper is. Has Arteta made his life more difficult with that decision?
No, not at all.
Okay.
Now he can make a choice.
Well, I retract.
Because his goalkeeper has played. So now I've got two live goalkeepers I can make a decision on. Right? And because he's had a game. If he played Matt Ryan in this game and he hadn't played, he makes one little issue, we'd all be killing him. How could he play him? He's not had a game for 3 months. Do you see what I mean? So he's had a game. Now the playing field is level. And I think, and also, Leno's been making a few mistakes for a while now, and you can argue some of the back pass goals we've given away. I didn't think they were both his fault, but you could easily attribute those games to him.
Distribution side, I got to agree with you, Clive. If you want to really pull him up, distribution is where I would do it.
Yeah, I'm always conscious. I know football, but I'm not a goalkeeper, so I'm always conscious of this. It's difficult, but the near post one at West Ham, not great. On a quick free kick. Come on, lads, we win that game. We don't concede that goal. There's real points here. And so there is a little bit of evidence there saying there is a decision to be made. Now, some people say, you're mad, you can't do this now. But I don't care, because I just don't see, I look into his eyes on the screen, I see somebody that's struggling with it a little bit.
Yeah, I guess, do you worry at all, and then Paul, I promise we'll bring you in here. Do you worry at all that there's an aspect of Leno, he had some comments recently about not knowing where his future is, yada, yada. I mean, managers aren't going to want to hear that at the very, very tail end of the season with the semifinal on the horizon.
Yeah, well, he's up there saying 2 years to go. I don't know what. I'm not sure what the future is. Yeah, no worries, mate. That's absolutely fine. And he's a good goalkeeper. I've got no real issues with him at the moment. He's out of form, so we have a decision to make.
Yeah,
simple as that. Like any player, if it was a right back, a left back, he's out of form. We make a decision. Don't make the goalkeeper position special. It isn't. He's not doing it. Sit down.
Here's the only area where I'd slightly disagree. Up at the front of the pitch where you got to score goals, I want you to pick the absolute most talented guy who can win you a game from nothing. In keeper, I don't need him to be the best. I just need to know he won't make a mistake that loses you the game. You can't do what Leno did at the weekend. You can have a mediocre keeper. If he saves the ones he's supposed to and doesn't throw it in his own net, that's fine. You'd like better than that, but you can win with that. You cannot win with a guy who throws it in his own net. So now the question for Arteta isn't which of these guys is going to be a star for me against Villarreal, because hopefully you don't need that. The question for Arteta is which of these guys will hold his nerve. And I don't know that he's got a clear answer there. And I will turn it over to you. The only thing I will say, Clive, before I turn it over to Paul, is you said that Leno looks like something bad is always about to happen. And I would defend him by saying we are all Arsenal supporters, and I think we can agree something bad is going to happen. That's pretty much, that should be the title of the podcast. Something bad is going to happen.
I don't agree with your goalkeepers, by the way. I think
you don't like my refrigerator. Really... Should I break out my refrigerator opinion again? Because everybody loves those.
Because I always look at someone, a goalkeeper like Millionaire at Liverpool, decent goalkeeper, made some good saves, but Alisson was just better. Yeah,
but Mignolet cost them a European trophy because he threw it in his own. He lost his nerve. He had a mental breakdown.
That was Karius.
Loris Karius. Yes.
That's why I picked on Millionaire, because he was just fine. He was just fine, just like our goalkeepers, just fine. Karius was doing things that were just...
he had a breakdown. That was actually hard to watch, to be fair.
Clive, very upsetting.
And I want to be clear. I'm not saying I want a mediocre goalkeeper. I want a star. But what I'm saying is, in the situation that Arteta's in right now, he has to pick the guy.
Solid.
Yeah, he has to pick, because he doesn't have a star. He's got to pick the guy who will hold his nerve. So, Paul, that's what I wanted to ask you is, do you worry that Leno has lost his nerve? Or do you think the narrative is over-indexing this error? Because in general, the problem with being a goalkeeper is you throw one in your net and suddenly it's a question. You can't make a big mistake at goalkeeper without people really focusing on it. You can make a big mistake almost anywhere else on the pitch. Hell, even a center back can kind of sort of get away with it. Keeper can't. So is it too much narrative right now, or is it a big question for the manager?
Definitely a big question. His response on the goalkeeper situation was kind of interesting, because he says, when asked about the goalkeeper situation, he says, no, I think we have two really good goalkeepers. So it's a bit vague what he was asked, but then he goes straight to, Matt Ryan got a chance against Fulham because he deserves it. I said before the game that he'd been training really, really well, and Burnt is our number one keeper, and he'd been doing well, and errors are part of football. So depending on how he was asked the goalkeeper situation, is he prepping us for the fact that Matt Ryan is now ready, and that's what that... But it may have been just the kind of the leaning of the question of, do you have a tough decision to make between these two guys? There's risk with Matt Ryan too. We've talked about the Leno risk, and I agree. He's, at the moment, he looks a little rattled, but I think he's a tougher character. Like you mentioned the Almunia thing and how you had scars from it. Well, I remember those days, and I had scars from you having scars from Almunia. You were... He caused you severe psychological damage, and you passed it on to the rest of us.
He might be my least favorite ever Arsenal player. I'm not even joking. Yeah.
And he is in that position. Like if you're watching one of those bank heist movies, and there's always the guy in the gang that's like looks really, really nervous, like he's going to shit himself at any stage and screw everything up just to make the movie exciting. Mm-hmm. And like that was the issue with Almunia. I think. If you averaged out him as a keeper, he was probably pretty close to good enough. It's the fact that he had everybody convinced and therefore nervous and sketchy around him that he was about to shit the bed and take the team with him. And that's one of the things I've always thought Leno's pretty good at. He just seems very, very solid. He generally has an air that's fairly calm. Now, I think that air is a little cracked at the moment. People kind of look... that thing Clive said about, I look into his eyes and, you want to see the eyes looking back. I'd say every time anybody even walks past Bernd Leno in the dressing room, they're all looking into his eyes, and he's like, "Stop looking at me, bloody eyes! I'm fine." It's like, he's getting a sandwich at lunchtime in a store around the corner, and the sandwich guy is looking into his eyes, trying to see what they can see with Bernd Leno. So, after a while, it just gets to you a little bit. But there's a risk, obviously. You throw Matt Ryan in, even if he's in reasonable shape and he's in reasonable goalkeeping form, you put him in a tense, combative game where everybody's not quite sure, which is his good foot, where does he really like it? If I put it there, Leno gets to it because he's more athletic. This guy's not quite as, there's all of those uncertainties of, I know Leno wants me to play it back to him here because I've been playing with him for 2 years. I don't know if Matt Ryan wants it under that much pressure right now. Do I put it out? No, I'll put it back. Oh shit, he wasn't ready. So even if Matt Ryan's in a reasonable place, his connections to other people are going to be that little bit off. So I don't know what we're going. If it were me, what would I do? I'd pick Leno again for Villarreal, despite the fact that he's a little nervous. It's the devil we know, basically. Yeah. And I think he can respond. And he's then you got it doesn't really, this is such a big game that you don't worry about this in one sense, but you still got what have I just done to our number one keeper to drop him for Villarreal? Does that mean I'm not playing him for the rest of the year? Because there's a second leg of Villarreal, and then there's the United final. What, do I drop him and then bring him back in because Matt Ryan was bad or Matt Ryan was good? If he makes the switch for Thursday, that's your number one the rest of the season, and then you're going into the summer buying a new keeper. And Arteta may not see that both keepers can give him the same kind of game. So, we've kind of built our game around Leno. I don't know. I think Leno is going to get one more stab at showing he can be solid. Yeah. Well, we'll see about that. You know what you don't want to stab, solid or not? I do. Your privates? Not my best segue. But you don't want to stab them. You don't want to scab them. You don't want to cut them. You don't want to nick them. You just want to trim the hair, not the flesh. And with that, we are into the Manscaped promo. Our dear friends at Manscaped, there's so many good things I want to say about this company. But before we even get into their wonderful products, I want to talk about their wonderful mission. And that is to raise awareness for the Testicular Cancer Society. Manscaped, now available in the USA, Canada, the UK, Australia, New Zealand, the EU. We have an exclusive offer. When you use promo code ArsenalVision, you get 20% off and free shipping at manscaped.com. Manscaped.com, promo code ArsenalVision. And right now, together with the Testicular Cancer Society, Manscaped's committed to raising awareness for the most common form of cancer in men aged 15 to 35. I imagine many of you listening fit that description. And giving support for fighters, survivors, and families impacted by testicular cancer as part of We Save Balls initiative. And so while it has a silly name, it is an important mission. Proud of them doing that and proud to be able to speak about it. And hopefully the next time you're using your Lawnmower 3.0, before you get to the shaving, you'll get to the checking, just to make sure everything is safe down there and that you are free and clear to shave away. And hopefully you will shave away all of that unwanted hair. We've got a live event coming up. We're going to be talking about that in mere weeks and hope to see you there. But whether we see you there or not, when this whole pandemic nonsense is over, you know the plan. We're all going to see who's got the best Manscaped. No, we're not. I keep saying we're going to do it, and I'm worried that people are going to do it. We're not going to do it, but you should do it. You should do it for yourself, for your partner, for men, for women. It makes no difference. This thing is awesome. The Lawnmower 3.0, waterproof, battery operated. It has ceramic blades. Yes, genuine ceramic blades with skin-safe technology. So you're going to want to get that. The Weed Whacker does the ears and the nose. They have amazing
tonics and products for your privates that make them smell good, look good, feel good. It's all good. Just get 20% off and free shipping by using promo code ArsenalVision. That's it. Arsenal Vision at checkout. You're done. Always the right tools for the job, my friends. It's manscaped.com. Go there now. Clive, is that enough?
Yes, sir. Let's go.
Are you sure?
Yes, I'm sure.
It is enough.
Clive's old school, isn't he?
Yeah. That, you know what? There's nothing wrong with that. Nothing wrong with 70s style, even if it's against the brand, the pod brand. But what I will tell you is, if you don't watch our live streams, I hope you will start to watch our live streams, because you actually get to see the Lawnmower 3.0 on the live stream. You also get to see Clive's beautiful face and Paul's beautiful face and what has been described as a face, along with other people. So I hope you'll join us for our live streams. We'll have one pre-match before the Villarreal tie on Thursday, where we can all freak out together. Better to freak out together than alone, at least presumably. Okay, enough of that. Clive, I guess that means we can just about set aside the Everton result. Look, we are going to finish mid-table. That is done. We are not going to qualify for Europe by the league. It makes it very easy for the players to focus on the mission ahead. I guess I can ask you, do you care to have a conversation? You know what? Let's do one more thing from the Everton game. I'm not going to do the VAR thing. I'm just not. There's content out there for it. Andrew and James had a great discussion on the Arscast about it. You can listen to theirs. I got nothing to add. We all know it's ridiculous and it has to change. The people that run football need to get their head examined. But one thing I did want to touch on from the Everton game, Eddie Nketiah actually had a pretty decent game in my view. I thought he was fine. Like, not good, but just like I thought he wouldn't be as good as he was. He was perfectly acceptable. But Gabriel Martinelli comes on the pitch, probably our first time seeing him at center forward, really. And like, it's not that he did anything amazing, but one little moment where there's nothing there, just his tenacity and his understanding in the box and his quick feet to get a shot off and nearly get us that equalizer. I just feel like every time he is on the pitch, he has a unique ability to provide some kind of end product, sometimes from nothing, sometimes, as part of play. I know all the issues some people have with him technically and in build-up and stuff, but I see a player that, if there is no Oba and there is no lock on Thursday, should be picked ahead of Nketiah. So do you have a feeling about the cameo Martinelli made and how involved he should be on Thursday in light of the way he's been playing?
Yeah, he looks sharp. He looks like somebody can do something. I don't think he's a...
Those are good players to have, I feel.
Yeah, he looks sharp. He can do stuff, and, the stuff he does is quite unexpected. He tried an overhead kick the other week. I thought, that's crazy, but that's sort of stuff that you want for your forward. I think, again, he's the next man. Well, by that I mean he should work off somebody. He should work off the man. I don't think he's the man yet, right? He needs to work off the man. I still think he's better in the half spaces. Or we play with... Is
that a Griezmann type guy then you're talking about? Griezmann's always been a guy who works off
he's
the
somebody
man.
that needs to be free to work off at somebody else, because I think he can see stuff. People say, we should just play Martinelli, but you have to think about the sort of player that he is. He tends to be somebody who can go long in behind, but he's not. He's okay at it because he's quick, but he's really good at sharp, small movements. Really in crowded areas, funny enough. He's really smart. He sees space where there is none. So if you play someone like Martinez, we develop how to play with him. We need to squeeze the game a lot more. Squeeze the game up, play much higher, and compress the space. I think he'll be dynamite in compressed space game. It's not just about replacing one for the other because he's had a good shot. It's a completely different way of playing. And I think if we're in a situation where Aubameyang doesn't play, I think he will. But if he doesn't play, we need to think about how we play completely. And I would just change Xhaka out the back four. I would play a different left back. I would squeeze the game up, and I'd put them under pressure from the front and make it a Martinelli game. Don't play the Arsenal game we played recently, where we've built up slow distances, wide triangles, get people in cross. I don't think that's wholly his game unless he's part of it from the wide areas. So it needed a few changes for me, but which I'm sure the manager can work out for himself. I think he's really bright, and I never know what's going to happen really with him. I can just watch him and think, what's he going to do now? It's really interesting how he sees the game, his desire to get shots, desire to create something. When he goes left foot, he gets great left foot crosses in, right foot crosses, good shots. He makes the right decision on his shots, creates his own shot. there's a lot there, Elliot. Do you know what I mean? There's a lot there. But again, we're back to where we were when we talked about authority. He's 19, is he? 19, 20? It's another young kid we're loading up, and loads of discussions about Super League. We could end up with two 19-year-olds and a 20-year-old leading our attack at the.
If they're those 19 and 20-year-olds, I'm probably fine with it, to be fair.
Yeah, but it's a lot. I love to see young players get a break, but come on, man, that's a lot to ask.
Yeah, I mean, Ajax nearly did something special in the Champions League with that kind of age profile.
Yeah,
I mean, I'm not saying it's ideal. I get it. I know you need some senior players, but those are some good young players.
Just need one. That's
Aubameyang's old enough for all of them.
we beat Spurs, didn't we, with Odegaard, Saka, and Smith Rowe behind Lacazette. You just need one. You see what I mean? To build from. We got Partey in behind. You got Xhaka in behind. You need to create a nice armchair for them to just thrive in.
But be the manager.
Get them to be the armchair and then do the finishing touch as well. You know, it's a lot to ask.
I mean, if Oba's fit, he starts. If he's fit and like really genuinely fit, can do it, he starts. But I'm asking you the hard question. He's not fit. Who are you picking?
Oh, well, if he's not fit, I would go with Martinelli.
Yeah,
I would go with him. It's not really a hard question. They're going to share the game no matter what. Got 5 subs, so it's not a big deal. If Eddie starts and we press from the front and Martinelli comes on and picks their pockets, that's not the end of the world. You know, people get obsessed about starting. It's not always the issue. Particularly we've got 5 subs. It's about how you manage the whole game and what sort of game you want to play in the first quarter, second quarter, etc. So if we want to play an Eddie game to start with, because Eddie looked really sharp for the first 40 minutes.
Yeah, I thought so too. He faded, but yeah.
Really sharp. But he faded badly, right? So
hasn't played
if he can reproduce that, then we change it. But the problem is with Arteta, and this is one problem I do have with him, I don't think he changes it quickly enough. The concept of sharing games, he did it really well in the 5-star FA Cup run.
Yeah, but in Europe, he's been weirdly slow. I agree. With the 5 subs in Europe, I think he's been slow to react, or slow to, what's the opposite of react? Proact. You know, slow to take control of the game.
We young players, share the game with them. You can see Smith Rowe's brilliant for an hour, then he fades. Saka a little bit too
as well. Yeah. I think that's exactly spot on. Well, let's bring Paul back in here, because Paul, I think there is one other point here that could really change everything for Thursday. We have switched to this sort of 3-3-4 or 4-3-3, depending on how you want to phrase it, with Xhaka at left back, principally because Tierney's been out, but also because Odegaard's been out. Now, we know when Odegaard was fit, Arteta loved him. The way he spoke about him, the way he used him, you really could tell he loves the player. And my guess is he will want to use him on Thursday. But Odegaard being back gives him the ability to go back to a 4-2-3-1, to push Xhaka back into midfield, to put ESR on the left, to use Odegaard in that floating 10, Pepe on the right or Saka on the right, probably Saka, sit Pepe down, which I don't love. Or if Aubameyang's not fit, Pepe through the middle, if not Martinelli. But it gives him that ability to go back to that structure and maybe just use Cedric at left back. Or he can take Ceballos out and use Odegaard as one of those sort of 2-8s, however you want to use them. I know you don't necessarily view it that way, but I think as a shorthand, you know what I'm talking about. Yep. I'm curious which you think he will do. In light of the fact that I'm not sure that role fits Odegaard as well as that between the lines player in the 4-2-3-1. So how do you think Odegaard's return and the likelihood that Arteta will want to use him impacts the system he might pick?
I think he's going to want to use Odegaard. I think he'll want to use it very much as a 4-2-3-1. I think that's a good call.
Xhaka back to midfield, do you think, to partner with Partey? Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I mean, hopefully he saw enough in the last couple. I think from the last couple of games, he'll be frustrated that it was good, but not good enough. Like maybe we all were against Fulham, against Everton. And he's going to want a bit more. Well, like, I don't think Aubameyang being back, obviously that's more. And it gives us that mature presence in the front four and an actual striker who might put the actual ball in the net. But that's only enough if you're generating the chances. I think he want to do something a little different, and he has relied on Odegaard when he's had him available. And Odegaard had an airing in the previous game for a little bit, in this game for a bit. So guess he's hoping that Odegaard's now ready, and we'll go with the 4-2-3-1, and it certainly gives him Smith Rowe as an option from the left potentially, which we've seen in multiple games. And hopefully he's not going to see if Xhaka can survive one more game at left back, because it's obvious what the opposition should do, especially as they'll be playing at home. And I know we don't think there's the same level of home and away differentiation that we've seen in other seasons.
Well, there is when you have the away goals rule, though.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
Yeah. So if they think there's a difference, there's a difference. So there's a good chance they'd come at Xhaka. There's a 100% chance they'll come at Xhaka at left back. So I'm hoping we go to a 4-2-3-1, which probably means Xhaka. Sorry, I hope we go away from Xhaka at left back, which means very, very likely Xhaka in midfield. So you're straight off a 4-2-3-1 with Odegaard in there. I do actually agree that the last game, this Everton game, was the most 4-3-3-ish, well, 3-3-4-ish. That was the most Dani Ceballos as an attacking eight we've seen. Like, I call him a slider depending on the state of the game. If we've got the ball, if we're on the ball, he is starting to push up like an extra eight, an attacking eight. And in this game was the most decided instance of that, where he was very much not just sitting in a two, because we didn't really use a two. And he was doing lots of stuff, but I definitely think this was your strongest case for, oh, look, we're playing with a three and a V in midfield with Partey at the base of it.
Yeah. Yeah, there were moments in the game where if you just freeze the frame, you could see it. It was geometric, yeah.
Well, and the thing is, I think in other games there were moments. In this game, I think you'd have to look for moments where it wasn't in that kind of a shape. It was very decidedly committed.
I see your point, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So, yeah, I think 4-2-3-1 is the most likely setup here, just on the assumption that we move Xhaka into midfield. And I do think we see Odegaard as pretty young, but I think he's been this mold and played at a high level consistently for a season or so with Real Sociedad. He knows this role, and I just think Arteta's confident in him playing that role. We've seen him play it for us solidly right from the get-go. I think that's the other thing you got to remember. Although he's coming back, he came into us cold and was good basically from the get-go. So he knows this job. He's very smart. Hopefully he'll just snap right back in here and be able to play the best part of a full 90 minutes against these guys. And we need to do something different, because although we've been, we can be kind to our performances against Fulham and Everton, as maybe we didn't get our due or whatever, but they still weren't enough. And
they weren't decisive. No, they were adequate without being decisive, and we need to be decisive. Yeah. You know what, Paul? Also, I mean, it really depends. I believe we have to score in Spain. We cannot come back needing to keep a clean sheet at home. I don't think we want to be in that position. I think playing the away leg first is fantastic, because I think you can go kill a tie by getting a couple of away goals. If he goes to the 4-3-3 or the 3-3-4, depending on how you want to name it, he gets an extra one of his attackers on. So we could have Odegaard, Smith Rowe, Pepe, Saka, and a striker. Either Aubameyang or, let's say, Martinelli or Nketiah. If he goes back to the 4-2-3-1, one of those guys comes out, probably Pepe, which I don't love, but it may feel like he has less of a target on his back with Xhaka at left back, and he has a little more solidity. I'll be curious to see which way he goes, but either way, I think we got to go try to get goals out there. We're not. Yep.
Isn't it funny how things have changed in terms of just how it? I don't recognize us from the first half of the year. Like, our choices are: will we go attacking or even more attacking?
Even more attacking. Will we get all the good attackers on the pitch or just most of them? Yeah, I mean, and it certainly looks like Willian is, to that point, has faded from the sort of discussion in terms of being a prominent player. I don't think we'll be seeing him start on Thursday, which is a relief. Paul's got to go, but we're not quite done here. So I'll say goodbye to Paul, who's on Twitter, Pause My Pants. Thanks, Pause.
Woohoo!
Thanks, bud. Look, I want to remind you that Akhil from the Arsenal Supporters Trust is going to be on to talk Fan Forum and the protest and stuff. A big proponent of that, organizer and all things AST. So we'll be talking to him in a moment. I hope you'll stick around for that. But before we do, Clive, there's really just two things I want to touch on. One is sort of just for fun, but one is sticking with this game. There's a lot of little availability issues here and tweak issues here that could influence Arteta's decision. David Luiz could be fit, I think. Aubameyang could be fit. Odegaard is fit. Shaq at left back versus, bringing Cedric back in, the goalkeeper. It is sort of the unfortunate situation. If I wanted to have a criticism of Arteta right now, it's that somehow we've gotten to the semifinal of European competition in late April, and really we don't know the system we prefer. Now, you could say that injuries had a lot to do with that and an unbalanced squad and trying to search for a solution. I don't think you want to be going into the first leg of a semifinal feeling like, well, we could play this midfielder at left back, or we could move him in and play this right-footed right back at left back. I mean, I realize that's injury related, but there's a lot of decisions that feel up in the air. So just very simply, do you have a sense of which way he'll go? And if there's one or two players in particular that might swing his decision making there?
Yeah, I think as fans, we have to get more comfortable with these tweaks and evolutions of systems. It doesn't.
I promise you, I can be uncomfortable in all scenarios and all environments. Don't test me.
These old structures, Elliot, throw them away, right? Because we do podcast analysing games. What do you think other teams are doing? Right? They're analysing us, and look at how long it took for someone to drop someone on Xhaka's toes. So for me, that experiment's done. I said early on I would play Gabriel in that position because we're building up with a 3 anyway. And so it's almost like a 3-2-2-3, right? So we have 2 in front in Partey and maybe Chambers tucked in on the right. You have the left-handed midfielder dropping in to make it a 3 sometimes, but it's normally a 2. With one of the forwards rolling off the front line with 2 people staying high. That's what we're really doing, and it just flows. So just protect one of your sides with someone who's a bit quicker. Just take away that advantage. And he can still build up. You're doing a 3 anyway. You've got 3 defenders there. And you roll to a 4 under pressure. You have 4 different Chambers drops in. So just do that. Put Xhaka into midfield. Get him to engage people much higher up. Have more collisions, more transitions. Our tackling numbers are very low. Make sure we can do that. Basically, just push the game forward. Push the emphasis of our attacking game forward. I'm not worried about the system per se. We all know that the identity of our players are so diverse in the moment that when we play certain people, we look different, right? So if you look at City, sometimes they have a tweaking shape, but they've got a similar set of technical players that their face doesn't completely change when they make those changes. Do you see what I mean? Ferran Torres is coming in, he's been built in behind. Basically, you got people like Bernardo, you got Foden, 2 lefties. You got players being built, getting ready to come in, but they're all quite similar players that have similar principles of play. I think that's what we need to focus on, having players that have similar principles of moving it quickly, receiving it on the half turn of technical play, which we now have a few of. They're just very, very young. That's where we are at the moment. So I'm absolutely fine with whatever he ends up doing. I would like to see Gabriel play left back. I've said it a few times. I just would do that, and I would just like to see a bit more. Obviously, we need our forwards to be there. I want to see Aubameyang play. I really do, and I found it quite sad, by the way, recently, the way fans have been towards him. I think it's quite depressing how short our memories are. I think if you can imagine it from a player's perspective, how they miss the fans right now. So the only connection that they're getting is via social media. And I saw some posts that Aubameyang did last week, and I just made a mistake of looking at it in the comments. Why I did that, I don't know. And it was really quite vicious, the abuse that he was getting. Thinking, what's going on here? Do you know what I mean? I find
what has he done wrong?
I don't
understand it. Golden Boot winner in a bad Arsenal team, came to us in his prime despite us being down, signed a new contract with us despite us being down, committed to lead the line to us, doing the best he can in a broken team. Like, what's he done wrong?
Yeah, we're all different, right? So I can sit here half an hour ago saying, like, I look into the goalkeeper's eyes and wonder if he's lacking a bit of confidence. I'm not going to tweet him back and call him this, that, and the other.
Of course.
You know what I mean?
Can I just say one thing about that too? Because that is a point that people don't get. Sports wouldn't be fun if we couldn't analyze it. There's a difference between analyzing it and then showing up at someone's house and telling them their shit. There's a difference, right? So that's well said. I'll turn it back over to you, but I think that's a really important point. It's fun to analyze it, but you don't have to drag your nasty opinion into the face of the player himself. That's where it becomes a different thing.
Yeah, absolutely. I think because I felt the game on Friday was a unique game, and I did feel that the fans were missed. And I started to look back at some quotes Arteta made last year about missing the fans and missing that connection. And he said it definitely affects the players. And he quoted Old Trafford. He said, "Imagine we went to Old Trafford, we won. Normally we go out, we celebrate, we go out with their friends to celebrate. They have to go home and sit down. There's no enjoyment. We won an FA Cup. There was nobody there. There's no connection during the good days when we beat City, beat Chelsea. There's nobody there. There was no connection between us and the players, and we're becoming more distant to them. And now we feel as though when you're distant from somebody, you feel as though you can abuse them a little bit more. Do you see what I mean? I don't like it. I don't like what's happening. I really don't. I think it's more important that we overly support during this period, if that makes sense. Even though we know in our hearts certain people are not where we want them to be, we need to overly support them because they're only young men. They need us too. Do you know what I mean? They need us. Their job has been turned upside down. The whole purpose by which they play, the purpose that drives them, when they've hit a wall on the pitch, they can't run anymore. What drives them? It's that connection to the club, your teammates, and the fans. We're talking about how we're important, and we'll be important all the time. Don't just be important when it suits us, when the owner's got the ump. Be important all the time. You know, I think it is. It doesn't mean you can't critique somebody. I just see some of the abuse that the players get directly, and I don't like it.
Yeah, and I want to say one thing because there are some people listening saying, oh, well, yeah, those things drive me. You know what else drives them is the great money they make. And I want to be clear about saying they do make amazing money. And I think that puts them in a unique stratosphere. And that stratosphere includes maybe not being able to check their mentions on social media, which is ugly and unfortunate, but it's the reality they live in. Celebrity is a very strange thing. And people who have celebrity have to live in very different ways. But anyone who's had a job can tell you this. When you show up at your job, you don't do a good job or a bad job because of the size of your paycheck. You know, how much money you make is important. Of course it's important. But it's the influences around you that impact how hard you push, how well you do. It's a boss telling you did a great job today, or it's a fan cheering you on, singing your song, ringing it around the stadium. So I get that they make a lot of money. But what's unfortunate is the roars of the crowd when you score a goal, when you lift a cup, when you win a game, those are gone. So what does that leave you with? It leaves you with social media. And there, you're mostly getting the opposite. The trolls and the abusers and the people who would make your life miserable. Hell, I mean, even if you're playing well, other clubs' fans are in your mentions trolling you. So that the positive feedback loop isn't there right now. And I think that is hard for anybody in any job, let alone athletes who are performers. I mean, that is what they do for a living. They perform. So yeah, and that's not me saying Aubameyang's had a great season, by the way. You can have a bad season and not deserve the kind of
he's just an example, isn't he? He's just an example. I mean, let's be honest. Saka was only a couple of games away from getting it himself. Do you see what I mean? And that's how quickly things happen. And I don't know what's happening. Look, mate, I don't know what's happening to people. I mean, look, Klopp was getting it, FSG were getting it.
Can I just say one thing about that? I can tell you what's happening to some extent. You have taken a globe of people, locked them in their homes, shut them out from one another, and said the only way you can communicate is with these technology tools that amplify the most ugly human emotions and instincts. The instinct to shout and yell that will amplify the angriest opinions, the most divisive opinions, the most upsetting comments. And then that's what you're surrounded with. So you're not hugging your grandmother or shaking hands with your best friend over a pint at the pub. You are online being confronted by that kind of energy on a day-to-day basis. And I'm not trying to forgive people for being nasty, but it's one of the reasons we need this over and we all need to get back to being in the ground and being together and, being in person, because that dynamic can bring out the best of who we are in ways that the digital environment doesn't always. So, I'm not trying to give people an excuse, Clive, for being horrible.
Oh no, it's a very good point, and it's a unique time in our lives, right? This is it. It's
history.
It's our generation's version of the World War. Literally, that's what we're going through at the moment. So hey, look, we lack chemistry with our ownership, obviously, and you'll come on to that with Akhil shortly. But we lack chemistry from the top. We know there's a leadership void. We know we've seen many, many bad football decisions on and off the pitch, business decisions, millions going out the door, millions being wasted. We're still paying our old number 10 X amount a week. We don't know what that looks like. So we know we're not in the best place. But we can create the right chemistry with the players. That's what we can do, And the only way we can do that is mostly online. We haven't got to at a player every time someone says something about them and stuff like that. I just don't see the benefit of that. And I've never seen any club win anything without good ownership, good player-fan relationships and manager relationships. Without that interconnection, I've not seen it work for me.
Yeah.
And at the moment, we haven't got a lot of that at the moment. But we can control one thing, and that is how we connect to the players. And I think we have a responsibility to be better at that.
I couldn't agree more and couldn't have said it better. Let's finish on a football note, just so everybody gets a palate cleanser. I'm going to say two words that confuse me, and I want you to help me understand. Okay? Say two very confusing words for me, and I want you to help me understand. You ready for those two words?
Mm-hmm.
Joe Willock.
Oh. Well... Yeah, well, he is an interesting player, isn't he? It depends.
What is he? If we only knew how to use a player who can score goals from midfield but can't seem to do other midfield stuff, that would be really interesting. But I don't know where that is.
I think, I think Tim's tweeted out something a little while ago about goals from midfield. And I think Joe Willock's got 4, and I don't think any of ours has got. I think he used.
We have none from open
Partey,
play. We have one from Xhaka from a free kick. That's it. Yeah.
Yeah, and when I saw the tweet, I did smile to myself, because that really tells us what Joe Willock is, right? He's not one of 2 midfielders that sit in and create a base. He's the next midfielder. He's the third midfielder in the 4-3-3.
But we play that now.
But we play that now. Well, we don't really. Really. We roll into it. Yeah. We roll into a shape from the front end of the pitch. If we were to set up as a 4-3-3, then you got to say to yourself, we got to maximise his potential. But he's also worth £25 million at the moment. And we could buy a midfielder we know exactly who he is, what he does for a system that we are going to end up playing. Right? So, and that's the dilemma. I mean, I think he's a fine player, but you said it there. What is he? What is he? And for us, he goes up against Smith Rowe. And Smith Rowe's a bit cleaner, technically better, goal scoring potential, can be used in the upper end of the pitch and could be developed into the lower end of the pitch quite easily. So he's going up against him. He's going up against either Odegaard or a signing. Right? So you've got to say to yourself, do we utilise that resource to allow us to get where we need to get to by adding a signing in that area, by using it for another centre midfielder that gives us a bit more authority than some of the players that we have there already, a bit more go forward than Elneny, for example. I've got a little bit more that allows Partey not to do everything in the middle of the pitch. There's opportunity to develop the team, to upgrade the team. And sometimes you just got to take it. I've been saying that for a long time. Just upgrade. But make sure, Joe Willock is one that I'll be disappointed to see go. But if you've got 25 million and he can go and get his career and play for a team that absolutely plays to his skills, and that's a success in itself for the club. That's a huge success. He may not fit where we are or where we need to be, but he can have a fantastic Premier League career. And his goal against West Ham, that was a goal. He's gone to Anfield and scored in the last minute. This is good stuff. And it shows what happens when you believe in a young player. You believe in it, and he's not starting all the games. He's giving it 25 minutes towards the end. But he's coming on to a game plan. Again, the starter-finisher thing. He's finishing the game. They finish with a strong team. They bring on him and Callum Wilson towards the end, and they run teams back. And that's their game plan, right? So, and he's benefiting from it. He wants to start games. But at Arsenal, we know what he wants. We know what to use him. We played him number 10, a true number 10. He doesn't get on the ball enough. He needs to be in broken play, but the team doesn't really have the ball that much. But he'll get you a goal. And the first time I saw him at Newcastle kit, I thought, that suits you. And then he seems really happy. And that's the most important thing. But hey, if he comes back and we have a plan for him, great. But if he goes 25 mil, great as well. And we got to be, you taught me this, we got to be not afraid of the churn.
Yeah.
Take
Kill
it,
your darlings.
take the money.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
And, there's a player at Brighton who I think is fantastic. And he would transform the base of our team. And I know exactly what he is.
Dunk.
And he, yeah. and he can play 8, he can play 6. And the way and the way he plays, there's no debate. Right? So and if that helps fund that move, we need to do it, right?
Basuma special. I agree. All right. Well, here's football. We're going to talk a little fan forum. We're going to talk a little protest with Akhil from the AST. So that is coming up. But that means we have to say goodbye to Clive, unfortunately, who will be back on a future Patreon pod that you should subscribe to because, come on, support Clive's work. Or don't. Either way, we love you. Clive's on Twitter at ClivePFC. Thanks, Clive.
Thank you very much.
All right, we're going to take a break and come back with more after this. But before we do, I do want to tell you about another partner that we have and a really special company called Candid. It's candidco.com, Candid, C-O, the letter C-O.com, candidco.com. Are you unhappy with your smile? Well, you don't have to be. Thousands of people have Candid, the clear, comfortable, removable, and practically invisible aligners that help straighten your teeth. And now they love their smile. And you know what? You could too, just like Justin from Atlanta. When he was younger, he used to have a gap in the front and side. He noticed that people always looked at his mouth first because, right, when we smile, that's what they see. He was looking for a fix, and Justin says Candid ended up being the perfect company for me. And he can't stop smiling, which is good. We'd all love to feel that way right now, given what's going on in the world. Look, I remember I went to a dentist. I have a slightly turned tooth and then one that's slightly out of position, and I had worn braces for years and years and years as a kid, would never go back to that. They wanted to sell me an invisible aligner thing that was going to be thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars. No thanks. This is thousands less. Your treatment's prescribed and closely monitored remotely by a licensed orthodontist who's an expert in teeth movement. So you're still getting real orthodontic care there. You'll have the same quality care you'd get from an in-office orthodontist, the comfort and convenience of your own home. So other companies use general dentists. Candid uses orthodontists. And the average Candid treatment is just 6 months. You'll start seeing results before then. It costs thousands less. So go for it. Become your best you. Start straightening your teeth today. Right now, you can save $75 on Candid Starter Kit. Go to candidco.com/vision. Candid C-O. Candid C-O, like Candid Company. Candidco.com/vision. And use code VISION. All the vision. Be like Martin Odegaard. Have all the vision. Candidco.com/vision, code VISION. That's candidco.com/vision, code VISION. Take advantage of this limited time offer to save $75 on your starter kit. Candidco.com/vision, code VISION. Okay, nonsense out of the way, and now we can get to the good stuff, and that means I get to introduce a very special guest, Akhil Vyas, from Arsenal Supporters Trust, a board member at the Arsenal Supporters Trust. In fact, you can follow him on Twitter at 10Akhil, number 10 Akhil, and it is my great pleasure to speak with you now. Hello, Akhil.
Hello, yeah. I'm the fact that you said the fun begins now, I hope I'm not going to disappoint, but I'll give it a go.
Yeah, well, to be fair, I think when your area of expertise that we'll be speaking about is the crumbling of the values and traditions of our club under the ownership that we have currently, I don't know that you could qualify that as fun, but it's certainly important and interesting, and I appreciate you giving me the time, yeah.
No problem.
So let's start in an interesting place, actually, because you are positioned to know about some conversations that are ongoing that I think a lot of people may not be as up to speed on. Tim Payton, who is also on the board of the Arsenal Supporters Trust, actually met with Boris Johnson, who, in addition to having quite floppy hair, has quite a bit of political power as well. He is the prime minister of your great country. And there's obviously a lot of discussion of government's involvement in regulating football and the ownership model within football. And I'm wondering if you can sort of expand on those conversations and what you understand to be some of the mooted ideas and approaches to trying to be custodians of the game, but also maybe some concerns you might have about that as well.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, the reason why a meeting like that comes together is the way we work with other football organisations and supporters across the country. So people, I'm not sure people really knew this up till probably last week, but we have just as many conversations with other supporter trusts than we do with our own sort of other Arsenal groups. You know, we're in WhatsApp groups with Spurs, Chelsea, Man United, Man City, supporter groups. We're a part of the FSA, which is the Football Supporters Association. So we have regular Premier League meetings. When we actually meet the Premier League, we're meeting them with maybe 5 or 6 other clubs, and we've got to represent all the Premier League clubs. So there's a lot of work that goes on. And what that essentially means is when you have an issue like the Super League, which happened last week, you kind of you gather all those clubs and all those fans together to make one powerful voice. So that's kind of how the Boris Johnson meeting came along, that it wasn't just Arsenal, because let's be frank, Arsenal were part of it, but it wasn't just about Arsenal. We're not arrogant enough to think it was just all about us. But the fact that it was Arsenal, Spurs, Man United, you know, we all met with Boris Johnson along with the Premier League and the FSA. It made it a lot more powerful. So that's one thing. I think working with other clubs is essential because it makes us all stronger. And then in terms of the actual meeting, I mean, you know, people will when you meet with prime ministers or politicians and stuff, you're always a little bit sort of suspicious about why they're meeting you, if they're going to actually do anything. Is it just PR? It was the biggest story of the week? Is it, you know, but what we had a very clear aim, and that was to get some sort of a commitment from the Prime Minister that his government will look into the structures of kind of football, and then get a commitment that which minister is actually going to do it. And I'm pleased to say we got that. So we talked to him about the Super League, about fan ownership, about kind of, you know, what the Cronkies did to our minority shareholders and stuff like that. And I don't think he's a massive football fan, but he did get it. And then most importantly, he committed to a review. And that review is being done by Tracy Crouch, who's a former sports minister, so she gets sport. She's a Spurs fan, but apart from that, she's a very nice person. And she's already taken that forward. That's already progressed. The AST and other supporter groups will have a chance to input into that. So it has moved on in a week. So in a way, we'll probably won't speak to Boris Johnson again. And in a way, we don't really have to, as long as we can speak to Tracy Crouch. And because she's a former sports minister, she does get it. So that's kind of how it works. You know, we did get some tweets and stuff saying, oh, well, the Prime Minister's obviously going to agree because of PR. And that's all fine. And maybe that is the reason. But since then, it's moved on and we don't really need the Prime Minister to do much now. So it was definitely worth doing. And hopefully we'll see change. You know, whether we see a change of owners, you know, that would be great. But you want to make sure that the next owners can't do the same thing, and then the owners after that can't do the same thing. We want to protect our clubs for, you know, not just our lives and our, you know, generation, Elliot, but our children and grandchildren's generation as well. So making some sort of structural changes will actually do that. And that's what we want. We want fan representation at boardroom level. And by the way, that doesn't mean, you know, people like me, because I'm not qualified enough. I can talk a good game, but ultimately,
I think
I'm
you'll
not
find there's lots
enough.
of unqualified people running Arsenal at the moment.
Well, yeah, good point. But you know, if you could find the right type of people, whether they're business owners with experience, whether there's ex-players as well, you know, we've had lots of legendary players who could play a part, then that's what you ultimately want. But we'll certainly be fighting for this because we think it's needed.
Yeah, I mean, look, it is hard for me. There's a saying in politics, never let a good crisis go to waste. And you do wonder if this is, hey, when as a politician do your aides come to you and say, here's the thing everyone hates, and if you come out against it, it's an easy win, right? So
yeah.
There is obviously always that concern of self-interest, but I think one thing that is relevant, Akhil, is that when government gets involved, even if it's in sort of an illusory way, just the mention of government involvement may be enough to make business owners and billionaires fearful of trying to push something through for fear of being regulated. Because if there's one thing we know they don't like, it's being regulated by the government.
Of course, and exactly that. And I think sometimes you have to use the crisis to your advantage. And in a similar way with, at the moment, Arsenal are apologetic, and they are they know their fans don't trust them. They have to make it up to us. So this is where we need to use that to our advantage. And it was the same thing with government. So, in a crisis, you need to be smart. And I think fans were smart last week across the country, ultimately leading to the Super League kind of falling over quicker than a pack of cards.
Yeah, it was hilarious and delightful to see both at the same time. Let me ask you about fan involvement on the board level or just in the club generally. I mean, I think we're not so naive as to think that being given a voice necessarily makes a difference to someone who owns 100% of the club. But is it fair to say that simply by having fan involvement, it's possible that the people running the club can connect to issues and concerns and ideas about the club that they have no other exposure to? Because the one thing this whole incident sort of really identified for me is the extent to which they are living in a bubble, that they thought that this could ever be met with anything other than being reviled universally by football fans. So is the benefit of having fan representation not so much that you have a decisive voice, but simply the ability to have the ownership understand the perspective of the fan in a way they clearly don't at the moment?
Yeah, I think so. At the first sort of instance, absolutely. I mean, Josh Kroenke last Thursday went and tried to tell us what we're thinking. He tried to tell us what the global fan wants, what the European fan wants, and what the national fan wants. Well, he could ask fans, he could engage with fans, and actually he'll get a much better answer rather than telling us what he thinks we think, which is wrong. So I mean, that absolutely at the first instance, and we've said that all along, that if they'd bothered to engage with fans or even bothered to just look at the minutes for previous fans forums, they would have actually seen that the position of fans on the European Super League is very clear, but clearly they didn't bother to do that, or if they did, they just ignored it anyway. So I think at first instance, yes, absolutely, just to have a voice in that boardroom, because we get a bit of a voice to the CEO and the execs. We do have kind of some engagement there and stuff like that. On Monday, we did get to talk to Arsenal, so that was the day after it was announced, and we absolutely we were very direct. We told them why we thought it was absolutely awful, an absolute disgrace. We called for the owner to be at the fans forum, which, by the way, was cancelled. We pushed for that to be back on, and then called for the owner to be there. So we certainly had a bit of a voice there. But yeah, absolutely. If the owner has some sort of an advisory board or some sort of board fan representation at board level to ping ideas across, then that would probably help. And board members would have to sign things. A lot of it wouldn't come out in the public domain, but just the fact that Josh or Stan or whoever the owner is could actually consult with some fans just to say, what do you think about this idea? It might be a start, because then at least some ideas, stupid ideas like this, might not leave the ground. And remember, if every club does that, then an issue like this might not have left the ground, because if Man City, Chelsea, Man United, Liverpool, Spurs all did the same, asked some fans about it, and all the fans were united and would have given the same sort of answer, then you might not have even had a Super League idea touted, because every club knows it was a bad idea from the start. So it's not just about Arsenal. It has to happen everywhere, which is why we're really calling from government.
Yeah, no, that makes complete sense to me. So let me ask you a hard question that there's no good answer for, which is, I think we've seen universally that the sentiment towards KSE is that their ownership is unhealthy to Arsenal and that they need to go. What's less clear to me is what a good owner would look like. You're choosing between oligarchs and sports washing nations and other billionaires who, I don't see why we presume they would be better billionaires, so benevolent Spotify billionaires instead of evil real estate moguls. It all feels like you're picking your poison. So as someone who, obviously, like myself, feels that this owner needs to go, do you have a sense of what you feel is the right thing to come in behind KSE, or how we would even start to think about a change in ownership?
Well, I think firstly, a good owner has good governance around him or her. At the moment, they don't. The Arsenal have a board of 4 people. Josh Kroenke, Stan Kroenke, Tim Lewis and Lord Harris. Lord Harris has been around a long time. Does he get a voice? I don't know. Chips Keswick was obviously there and left in the summer, a couple of summers ago rather. But Tim Lewis is the Kroenke's lawyer, legal man. So again, is he going to challenge the Kroenkes enough? So governance there is just totally wrong, and that the Super League sums it up, because the apology last Tuesday was from the Arsenal board. So it's very clear who made the decision, and that board just isn't fit for purpose. It's got the owners on, and it's got maybe two people who aren't going to fight against the owners. So that's number one. You can have execs in, you can have the best CEO in the world, you can have the best kind of director of football and stuff like that, but if your governance at board level isn't good, then you're not going to run a very good football club. So, clubs like Ajax and stuff have had former players there. We've got so many club legends that, just imagine having a few of them on board. There was talk of David O'Leary being invited, but it was rebuffed and it didn't quite happen for whatever reason. Dennis Bergkamp is obviously being touted in the last day or so recently, but imagine having someone like Dennis Bergkamp involved as well, respected around the world, intelligent, so that's one thing. I think having governance, the right governance, which Kroenkes don't have at boardroom level, is one, about running a good football club. And then obviously that engagement piece with fans, actually, when was the last time the owners actually engaged with fans? The forums just aren't there. Again, the execs do engage, but then we've seen this week that if there's a big decision to be made, it's the owners that are going to make it. So ultimately, are we engaging with the wrong people? You could argue we are. So the engagement aspect is massive, and the owners don't do that. So if they could get that right, governance and engagement, it would probably help. Of course, then you need right people running the show. So, if you need to, have the best people in the commercial part, so they're getting the best commercial deals for the club. The people that are in charge of contracts need to be kind of very good. Recruitment, the manager, the CEO, all that comes after. But if you can get your governance right, then that is a little bit easier. Is Edu the right person? No idea. Is Mikel Arteta the right person? No idea. But at the moment, the boardroom isn't fit for purpose, which means would Stan or Tim Lewis even know if Edu is the right person or not? How would they know? They don't quite get our game. So if you did have a Dennis Bergkamp, I'm just using his name because it's been touted recently, but if you did have a couple of Dennis Bergkamps on the board who actually get the game, they'll probably be able to tell you fairly quickly if Edu is the right person or not. Of course, they were teammates, so it's maybe a little bit conflict of interest. But you know what I mean.
Yes,
if you got people in the game, then that would help. So it all goes down to governance in that boardroom for me.
The suggestion that the people that had the wisdom to hire Raul Sanyehi may not know who the right guy is shocking to me.
There you go.
Yeah, I mean, that's a whole other story. Maybe best left unsaid. I think. Well, so a couple things. First of all, you have had access to Josh Kroenke, but not Stan Kroenke, and it raises the issue for me that you put a statement out on the website that Stan isn't on to launch the Super League. You put an open letter on the website that's signed by the board and not by Stan. You do a fan forum that Josh and Vinay are at, but Stan's not there. And I'll use casual first names with these guys because why not? It does lead me to wonder what, if anything, has been accomplished here if the guy running the club is Stan Kroenke. But that leads me to ask you, do you get a sense that Stan Kroenke is meaningfully turning over the reins to Josh Kroenke, or that Josh is just willing to go get out in front of the opprobrium surrounding Stan's ownership?
Well, I think Josh has been more involved at Arsenal. Certainly spent a lot of time around the time Arsene Wenger moved on. He came and spent time in London. He's the one who has attended the fans forum once before, so he's done 2 in 10 years, which is maybe an achievement for him, but certainly not good enough for us. Stan Kroenke's obviously got other business interests as well. He's obviously a lot older, so there potentially is a natural fit where Josh is kind of, Josh has always said that he's here to represent his family, and whether we're talking to him or we're talking to Stan Kroenke, it's the same thing. But obviously, Stan Kroenke's name is the owner of KSC, who own Arsenal Football Club. So we'll always be wanting to hear from Stan as the owner. But ultimately, I think if we were to, for example, persuade Josh that actually you should sell the club, I think that message would get to Stan. And ultimately, if Josh says, yes, let's sell the club, I think Stan would agree with him. So I don't think there's too much to worry about there. I think it's just getting that message across, whether it's Stan or Josh, not massively bothered at this stage.
Two things that came out of the fan forum. I mean, yeah, you told them point blank, get out of our club. They said pretty clearly, we have no interest in selling. Do you get the sense that that is their position right now? I mean, there's rumors of, the CEO of Spotify being interested, but you can't buy something that isn't for sale. So do you have any instinct on whether they might be wavering in their commitment?
I think they certainly don't have any intentions to sell, and I do believe that, and I do believe what they said there. But then things can change. Things can change very quickly, and I think all the noise that has developed over the last few days, whether that's outside the ground, whether that's on social media, trending. I mean, who likes to see their own name negatively trending on social media? So I think noise does help. I think if that continues, they might have a decision to make, maybe. I don't think that alone, by the way, would make a difference, but certainly as a combination with other things. I think the government piece, do the Kroenkes want fans to have to own shares? Do they want to give some shares back? Do they want pesky fans, peasants in the boardroom? Probably not. So if that was to happen again and there was noise, then they might change their mind a little bit as well. And the other thing is if somebody else does make a decent offer where they're making money, and they might think, actually, you know what, it's not worth the hassle. So I think at the moment today, they certainly don't want to sell, and I don't expect them to sell. But you never know. Things change. You can own a house, Elliot, that you have no intention of selling, but one day something might happen where you just think, you know what, I'm going to sell. So you never know. But at the moment, I would say it's probably not high on their agenda. Yeah,
like, for example, if all your neighbors picketed outside your house every day and told you that you were a jerk and you should get out of town. Two quick things before I let you go. One, just really quickly, look, I wouldn't say this was a resounding defeat for the Super League, only insofar as at the fan forum, when asked about it, they basically said, well, the next time we'll approach it differently. We'll try to tell you about it more. Like, it wasn't exactly the comment of a group of people that feel this idea is done forever. There are issues with the structure in football presently. So given how quickly this was sort of dropped on us like a lead balloon, how nervous are you, based on those comments that they made, that this is just on pause more than it is truly killed?
Yeah, I mean, anything can happen again. I don't think we'll see much in the next year or two. I think clubs have, certainly in England, have learned maybe a bit of a lesson. But, would I be surprised if in 2 years' time, 3 years' time, there's another sort of Super League with maybe there is a bit of sporting merit in there, but it's a bit different? I probably wouldn't be surprised. But then hopefully before that can even happen, we've done some work with the government, we've changed structures, and hopefully then if a Super League proposal does come in play, owners wouldn't be able to just sign it off and go and do it because the structures have changed. So I think it's one thing at a time, if you know what I mean, Elliot. We can't worry about Super League 2 yet. Let's focus on changing ownership structures first. And then if we can do that, we've pretty much resolved a lot of the other things as well, like Super League 2.0.
Yeah, that's very well said. And the one thing we can all agree on is if they do have a Super League 2, let's hope they call it Electric Boogaloo. Last thing, and I know you're pressed for time, so I'll let you go. But with all that has happened, and with all of this pain that's been brought on the Arsenal fan base at the thought of really the fundamental structure of football being torn down, the ground will reopen. There will be Arsenal football at the Emirates again. Drinks with your mates and getting together before the game and going into the ground and singing the songs and having a few drinks after. That's what it's really about. You didn't get into this to be a politician, to be a custodian. Has this dented that connection for you at all? Are you desperate to get back in the ground, or do you find that this has in any way soured your taste for it at the moment?
It's a really good question. I think this is such a subjective question. I think everybody will have a different opinion, and rightly so, because we're all individuals. But funny enough, this week we did actually meet with the club in a pre-agreed meeting about the return of fans, because the AST have been heavily active in making sure that the return of fans is done safely and done fairly and all that kind of stuff. So we did have a meeting, but we were this was before the Super League was ditched, essentially. So at the time we didn't know. But we were very strong then and said, well, why would we want to come back? And on Monday and Tuesday, I was questioning, would I actually want to go back? Obviously, things have changed now, but I don't know. There's two ways of looking at this. One is we've been out the ground so long that we just want some normality and we all want to go back. But then there's the other way of looking at it. I've survived this long. I could probably survive another few months if it means that we've really put pressure on the ownership. So I personally would be potentially up for boycotting a couple of games, because that for me means that we could put more pressure on the ownership. But of course I want to get back in the game. Of course, I do it every week, go home and away. It's been a massive void. So I definitely want to go back. But maybe the year out has taught me that, if this happened 18 months ago when we didn't even know what it felt like not to go to games, I probably would have said, I just can't see a boycott. I just can't see people saying no, because it's unheard of at Arsenal. But now we haven't been there for a year and a half. Is it unheard of? Probably not, So again, it's subjective. There'll be some people who just want to get back, and for their own mental health and their own reasons, they just want to get back. Absolutely fine. Totally understand it. But there'll be some who say, actually, no, I've survived this long. I'm gonna go a little bit further. So hard to say, Elliot, but it comes down to personal choice. But it'll be interesting to see what happens in the next few weeks.
It will indeed. And, I think a lot of Arsenal fans will be signing up to Spotify this week if they haven't already, but that's a whole other story that we can talk about maybe next time. Well, look, the next time I talk to you, I hope it is to discuss our newly crowned Europa League champions and our future in the Champions League. But whenever it is, I hope I get the chance to meet you in person, share a drink, and some Arsenal football, and maybe not have to talk about this stuff at all. How's that sound?
Yeah, it sounds great.
Yeah,
sounds
absolutely.
Perfect.
Well, please follow Akhil on Twitter at 10Akhil and all the great work that he's doing with the AST and trying to keep Arsenal in good hands and on the right path. Akhil, I can't thank you enough. Thank you so much.
No worries at all. Have a good day.
Yeah, you too. My name's Elliot Smith. You can block me on Twitter, Yankee Gunner. We love you, and we will talk to you, hopefully, after Arsenal 10, Villarreal 0.